Hi guys, glad you found my channel here. Today I'm going to be discussing what it's like to have a hospital birth and maybe why you should consider having one too. So if you're new here, I'd love you to support me. Give me a like or a comment on this video, and please be sure to subscribe if you want to watch any more feature videos related to parenting, motherhood, pregnancy, or all of the above. So this has been something that I've felt really passionate about for a while now, and I started to feel this way after I had my first daughter in the hospital. I noticed that a lot of social media was showing a lot of these women that were having these beautiful home births and really just sort of talking about the beauty that it was to be at home away from the hospital setting and to have sort of that different kind of support system that maybe you would have in your home versus what you have at the hospital. Now, my experience, I feel, was really a positive one. I was able to have my first daughter naturally without really minimal interventions. And so for me, that was something that I was really hopeful for from the very start. Now, fortunately, my doctor was trained by midwives. He's from New Zealand, and so being here in Canada, that was sort of a unique situation, but he had some different approaches and a different attitude about birth. And frankly, he felt that, if you can go into labor naturally and you can have your baby naturally, that is probably the best thing for you. So as things went on and when I really started to progress in my labor, it looked like I was able to just do that. I was able to have my baby naturally. And I realized that there are so many things that can complicate labor and delivery, and not all women go into labor naturally. And plus, sometimes when you're in the hospital and you are feeling overwhelmed by the pain of the contractions, that you may decide that you want to get an epidural or some sort of medical intervention to help you through that process. And there's nothing against that, and I think it's just really different for each woman once they're in that situation. The thing for me that I thought was really refreshing is that when I got to the hospital and was admitted, I found that I had such a team of support and people around me that were just really willing to support me any way that I wished. So for me, because I was laboring naturally and I just kind of wanted to go through the motions of it, I had nurses come around me and that they were giving me counter pressure massage. They were supporting me, rubbing my back, being really reassuring. I was actually able to get into the shower, which was just amazing, and I had just sort of that hot water and everything that was on my back as I was laboring, because I remember feeling, especially with my second daughter, I remember feeling a lot of pain in my back. I was starting to have a bit more back labor, and so it was really nice to be able to just stay in the shower. And I do remember at one point I was sitting in the shower, I had a birth ball in the shower, and I turned to one of the nurses and I said, is the water gonna run out? Am I allowed to stay in here? And they just laughed. They said, oh, of course, you can stay in here as long as you want, as long as you're comfortable. And so that was really reassuring for me, and especially just going through the motions of all this pain, I just felt this unending support by the nurses and the staff. And I know for my husband, he was of course a big supporter, but sometimes it's hard for them. They don't really know what to do in those situations, and so just having that added extra team of support for me was amazing. I think the other thing that a lot of people wonder about in hospitals is, are you just going to be stuck on a bed? And for me, since I didn't get an epidural, I was able to walk around, I was able to wander my room. I know some women will walk up and down the hallways if possible. And I also was able to change positions a lot. And even when I didn't feel like I wanted to, sometimes the nurses would suggest that I would just switch positions. And sometimes that would help just to loosen things up or distract my brain from the pain. And I thought that was really amazing. At one point, I remember I had this sort of like pillow. It looked like a peanut or something. I had it in between my legs and I was laying on my side and I was laboring for a while. And that was just a method to kind of try to get the baby into a different position, because I was also feeling a lot of back labor at that point. And so it was sort of amazing that I just had these really knowledgeable people around me that just had all these really awesome suggestions. And for me, when you're in that state and you're feeling a bit vulnerable and you're kind of along for the ride when you're in that labor process, it was really nice to know that I had all these supportive suggestions and just reassurance that everything I was doing was okay and that they were there for me. Now, one thing I remember hearing about is that the hospitals were going to pressure you to take different medications or to have different things given to your baby. And that really wasn't the case for me. Nurses always asked before they gave something or offered something. I actually wasn't really offered much in terms of pain intervention until I kind of started to request towards the end. I was just really tired. It'd been hours that I'd been sort of dealing with the contractions, and it's just a tiring process. I mean, anybody, if you've been through labor before, you understand this, or maybe you're an expectant mom and you're sort of anxious about this whole process. Just know that yes, it is painful. You are along for the ride, but it's not something that you can't get through. I've done it 3 times now, and I'm not someone that I would go out and say and brag that I have this huge high pain tolerance, but rather it was just something that when you're in the motions of it and you know that this pain is what's going to help bring your baby into the world, you're at every contraction you're getting one step closer. Those are all things that you just sort of hold on to and focus on, and it really helps you to just sort of focus on that finish line. So even towards the end, when I started to feel a lot of pain, and this was actually before my water was broken with my first, my doctor gave me a little bit of, I believe it's called fentanyl. And if anybody's ever been in an accident or they've had a serious surgery, they may know that that's that type of narcotic. And this one is actually really fast acting. Now, I'm not a medical expert, but from what I understand, it just sort of goes into your system for a short time and then it goes out. So it's not actually affecting your baby, but it was enough to sort of give me a little bit of a break. And I felt that at that time, in between my contractions and then having my water broke, or having the doctor break my water, I was able to have a little bit of relief. And that was sort of the last stretch for me. With my first, I was able to fully dilate, and it was just wonderful. It was such it just felt like a victory because I knew that I was getting close to the end. So once I felt like I was ready to push, I was guided back to the bed. And I believe with my first, I think I was already in the bed, but even if I wasn't, or I was in a different position, I got into a position that I felt comfortable. Once again, at the hospital, if you are someone that feels comfortable squatting, you might feel comfortable laboring, standing up. I know some women have done that before. I myself, I'm so tired by this point that usually just the comfort of laying down for me just feels best. And so I got into the position to labor, and from then on it was just me and my doctor and my team of people, my husband who was with me, and then it was go time. It was time to push the baby. So all through that process, I was fortunate enough that it didn't take too long, but once I delivered my first, unfortunately I tore, and I only had a 2nd-degree tear, which means that I had quite a few tears. They were in different places, and so I had to get sutured up shortly afterwards. And so I was really relieved to be in the hospital, especially with my doctor, because he reassured me that he's an expert at this stage in suturing women up, and he takes a lot of pride in his work. And so I felt like I was in good hands. And the beautiful thing is that when your baby's born, and if they're able to come out vaginally and everything looks okay, you're able to hold your baby, you can comfort your baby. And I'm pretty sure I held my little girl while I was even getting sutured. I can't quite remember, but I know that it sort of followed along those lines. One thing that I really appreciated after having my daughter, and actually with all 3 of them, is that I was able to hold my baby skin to skin for quite a long time before they did any interventions in terms of checking the baby or cutting the umbilical cord. Even now in our hospital, they do delayed clamp, what is it called? Delayed cord clamping. And so I was able to just hold my daughter against my chest, and then they just sort of waited before my husband cut the cord. And I thought that was really interesting and something that I'd heard about, especially with a lot of home births. And I just thought it was neat that our hospital had adapted that sort of methodology. And if there's any nurses out there or doctors that perhaps could be watching this video, they could vouch for me. But to me, this was sort of something that I thought was quite new and something that didn't happen with my first. We did a lot of skin to skin, which was really awesome, and something that is just for every mother, whether you're having your first or your 5th, it is such a special time, a special moment to be able to hold your baby, your live baby, in your arms against your chest. There's no other bond like it. There's no other sort of more special moment than to be able to finally meet them and then just be able to embrace them. And so I really cherished those times that I had with all 3 of my daughters in the hospital. And then of course my husband was encouraged to hold our daughters and do skin to skin as well. And it was just so special and so meaningful that we were able to have that experience. Now, I know with mothers that have had C-sections, sometimes it can be a little bit delayed just because the mother's going through such a intense surgery, and there's recovery and all that involved. So I can't really speak to that, but I know that most hospitals will do their best to get baby with mommy as soon as possible, and it's really important, no matter what, just to have that early connection and that bond as soon as possible. So let me talk a little bit about why I'm so passionate about hospital births. So for one thing, fortunately for me, I was able to have a natural labor and delivery with pretty minimal complications. I think with my second, there may have been a situation where the cord was wrapped around her neck, but it wasn't anything that was really interfering with her heart rate or my ability to be able to deliver her. I think my husband had mentioned something about maybe the doctor had to go in and kind of just slip the cord off her neck when I was delivering her, but I never actually saw it or noticed it while I was in labor. But these are things that could definitely happen at home, and it's something that I think isn't really talked about or discussed. Life of a mom, you get interrupted when you're trying to make an important video. So I'm definitely not here to badmouth home births. I actually have some really close family members and friends that have had really successful home births, and I think it's incredible and amazing that they were able to do that. And I do think that there's something beautiful about being at home and having your newborn and the support and care and just being in the comfort of your own home. I totally get it. And I think that's why nesting is something that happens in pregnancy. We want to be home, it's safe, it's comforting, and essentially it's going to be where you're going to raise your little baby. So there's nothing against it. I think it's just a matter of maybe changing societal perspectives, especially what's presented in social media. So what I started to see a lot when I was pregnant, actually more so with my second, not so much with my first, was this idea that home birth was really the best way or the best method to have a baby. And I think to a certain degree that sometimes it's really glamorized as such a beautiful, peaceful, magical experience, and then sort of the messier sides of it are not really showcased, which I understand, I get it. I don't think we should be putting out things into society and social media that are super negative or fear driven, because especially for new moms, it's not nice to come across stories where you hear about tragedies or things going wrong. But I also see that YouTube especially is a form of education. You can learn so much, and I just don't want the idea to be put out there that home births are necessarily the safest, best way. Now, I have a mother who's a pediatric nurse, and I also have a really good friend who's a doula. And so I've been able to kind of get a little bit more of an insider perspective on home births and midwifery and sort of the process behind it. Now, once again, I'm not personally experienced in that area, and so I won't claim to be an expert, but I just wanted to share that, some things can go wrong when you try to have a baby at home. And I know for myself that just being in the comfort of a hospital was so reassuring, because at the end of the day, I feel like most mothers want to advocate for the life inside them as well as their life as well. And so just to give you a little bit of an example, I heard of a story where a woman was hemorrhaging at home. She was trying to have a home birth, and she ended up losing a lot of blood, and she ended up having to be transported to the hospital. And luckily she was there, and there was a medical team that intervened, and so she didn't pass, and also her baby was safe. But these things can happen, and I think the thing to acknowledge is the fact that a lot of women do die in labor around the world when they're not in sort of a facility and they don't have the proper support team. And so I think with modern medicine, we have to give them some credit, and especially with the ways and the advanced ways that they can intervene and save both baby and mom. It's just tremendous. I couldn't be more grateful for our medical system. Yes, it's flawed. Yes, there are doctors and there are caretakers out there that maybe have challenges or have issues, but at the end of the day, I have faith that our lives are in good hands, and that usually the mother and the baby are both cared for and looked after and prioritized. And so the beautiful thing about hospitals is that they ask you before they give your baby anything. So I know some women are not for having the ointments put in the eyes of your baby. Sometimes they might do different things or techniques to your baby. Some women may want to have the cord blood collected, or maybe they want to encapsulate the placenta. I didn't do any of those things, but they definitely give you a lot of options there, and you're not just sort of left to whatever they recommend. Hey, you. Come over here.
Mommy.
Yeah. So this is my youngest, Paisley. Who's that?
Mommy.
Yeah. Mommy's trying to film, and you keep interrupting me.
Me.
So this is my littlest one, and she was my last hospital birth labor. I'm expecting number 4 in May, and so I'm really looking forward to that experience. And even though I've done it 3 times, I'm anxious for the 4th time. It always is one of those journeys that you just sort of anticipate, and you know, things can go any direction. I don't expect to go into it thinking that I'm going to go into labor naturally again, because I know that birth is so unique and each experience is truly unique. Having had 3, I feel like I have some experience now in the natural labor department and sort of understanding what to anticipate in the different stages. And so that gives me a little bit of strength and relief. But I'm also considering some different options this time around, which I'll share with you in a future video. But I definitely am considering an epidural possibly, or who knows, we'll see when we get there and when I'm actually in labor. You can never really plan or predict these things, but I hope that this video helps sort of give you a little bit of relief and understanding and knowing what it's like to go into a hospital and have a natural labor. And at the end of the day, it can be a really positive, beautiful experience that you get to share with your husband or your partner. And yeah, I wish you all the best in your journey, and I hope you'll stick around and follow along our journey. And cracker, yes, we'll get one. Okay, we'll go get one. And yeah, please share your experiences down below. If you're currently expecting a little one, let me know how far along you are and how many kids you have or how many you'd like to have. And let's stay connected. Let's create a community here. Thanks for watching. See you next time. This is what happens when you try and film with 3 kids. I don't know how other mothers do it, but Mommy, I'm trying here. Mommy, you want to say hi? Hi. 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 Yeah? Can you say anything else? Yeah. You could be silly. Hi. Hi. I don't know how moms do this. You guys got to share your secrets down below, because I have no idea. I'm constantly struggling to find times to film, so any advice, please share with me in the comments. Okay?